Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third day of the Manila PTG. So on Monday, we had a quick retrospective, and Tuesday, we had a couple of topics like the deferred deletions and the all things FFS hour. So if you are curious about what happened in those discussions, please let us know. Please let us know if you want to discuss things again, and if you don't have any clarity on something, or also if you would like to check out what went there are some notes in this in the etherpads, but also the OpenStack Manila YouTube channel already has all of the videos so far, so please check them out. So today we are getting started with human readable export locations. Yeah, so Sakumar, I think that's, yep. Do you want to do screen sharing or want me to continue screen sharing?
I can do the sharing and anything works. The link is there. I have put the info there, Carlos.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Sure, thanks. Floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. This is Sai Kumar from NetApp Bangalore, India. And today's topic is like adding support for the human readable export locations. And for this, we have the specs already merged from Carlos. And thank you so much, Carlos. That information has helped a lot. In fact, most of the info I kept here is taken from there. It's very clear. Yeah, coming to the current problem we have. Currently, whenever we create a share, the export locations are randomly generated and they are not really human readable, and they are like share underscore some numbers underscore something, which is very hard to memorize and control them. And when you want to mount a share, we often like daily go to the show share and get the export location from there, and we do mount. This is a tedious process when you deal with a large number of shares. So major difficulties, say you are handling thousands of shares and you are stuck with an issue and you don't know what export location of the share is get stuck. For the debugging purpose, it's very easy. When we create some mount point name for the export location. So the solution we are proposing is, whenever we create a share, we would like to introduce a field called mount point name. If you see the first line, the command will be like this: OpenStack share create in the solution of the first line. So name share and the mount point name is custom export path. We give like that, and whoever wants to create this, go create. And whenever you mount, it is very easy because we are giving the name. It is very easy to remember this name, and you do the mount. We don't need to go to the share and get the export location every time. And we have some restrictions whenever we are creating this. Coming to the second point, there we have written the restrictions. We will be accepting only underscores, and any other special characters is given in the name, we will be throwing the HTTP bad request. That's the first point from the restriction. And in the second point, the expert location should be very unique across the share servers. So we are planning to prepend it with the project name, like we have given it in the command. Can you highlight that, Carlos, here in the project name underscore custom export path. This is what we are going to do. And other restrictions also given. I think it's okay. I mean, you can go through that and ask if there is any doubt. And coming to the third point, we are going to introduce a new backend capability called human readable export location support. So whoever sets this true, the scheduler will pick it, and then only you can create with the custom export path by giving a mount point name. That's the one. And coming to the share migration point, first is your source and the destination, right? When we do migrate. So first point is, say your destination is not having the support for creation of this export location, custom export location. So when you set this human readable export location as true, this will fail because that doesn't have the support. And the second point is source has and the destination, source doesn't have the support and the destination has. And it will succeed, but we are going to set custom export path to none. And the third point is very customizable, saying that whenever you migrate, you just give new mount point name, and that will be updated in the mount point name. field, whatever we are going to give. Oh, so to brief about this, to make the administrator's life very easier, we are going to give mount point name in the share creation, and in the migration start command, we are going to give new mount point name. This is a content about the topic. Any doubts? Please ask. And we have some open queries. We can take them. Maybe Carlos or Gautam or anybody, please answer them.
Yeah, so first one I see here, it would be how someone can edit the mount point name they created. Yeah, like we know that I think the backend would be able to do it likely, but I think through Manila, it would need to be implemented as well. And it would likely be a part of a command, or even we could do OpenStack share set or edit the share if that's the case. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so we would like to support that as well. When you say we can edit, I mean.
Yeah. So if that is, if the mount point name is stored somewhere, like for example, if it's stored in the database, then yeah, we could just check it out and try to do to make the change, try to check the extra spec as well. But yeah, I think there's would this like be available to shares that are already created too? So that's the question I would get back. So would you like to do this only for the shares that you already created with the support for a mount point name, or coming from like a share that was already created, would you like to edit the mount point name for that too?
So you want to come back, or we made a decision like we will support this, Carlos? So if you support this, right, this is going to cause, for example, say at Nova, this is already mounted, okay, and but now we are editing that. So mount point name edited, and it means like we need to edit the project name custom export path, right? I mean the path also should be modified accordingly. But that old mount is already there, and that mount will no longer work, right? So somebody should make changes to that already mounted volume. So this kind of complication will come, right? So do we support edit?
Yeah, that's gonna be disruptive.
Yeah. So that Nova should automatically remount, and how we will pass this communication to Nova, right? Like, hey, this is a new mount, and you have to do auto mount. Maybe I don't know whether Nova is having the support of listening to this Manila request and change it. Not sure about that. Kind of attach and detach, all they have to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing with like this whole NFS stuff, like I think the support for Nova in Nova would only be aware of which shares are mounted only when we support the virtual OFS stuff, because they would record that in their database. So I think with Cinder that would be easier because they kind of know already, but with Manila, like it's difficult for you to know which share is mounted or not at the moment, because I mean it's basically something you can do, like you can go ahead in a VM and mount a share, and Nova wouldn't even be aware of that. So I think that's kind of like a tricky part. And when you, for example, if you would like to just modify the export location for that, then yeah, that's something that you will be doing by your own, and it can indeed be very disruptive because I mean there's no notification that changed. So like all clients that mounted that share, they would start failing, and some of them might not know why exactly that is failing, because I mean we changed that. If we allow that to be changed, then everything is going to be disrupted. So it's kind of like a tricky scenario. If you do that, it's basically something that I mean it would require some sort of like admin intervention, I would say, because administrators or people would need to know exactly where that share is mounted. Otherwise, I mean, failures will start happening.
So a question from my side. So I think this would be really, really useful in combination with something like Terraform, where you do the automatization of all your infrastructure, your virtual infrastructure, and then you query the shares and automatically add them to Cloud Init or whatever mechanism to mount them automatically. But yeah, besides from that, when whatever is mounted in a virtual machine or bare metal host, you are not in control. So can be anywhere, and it's up to the operator or user. For me, one addition is I added it to the Etherpad, to the other one, is whenever we are dealing with CSI drivers for Kubernetes, you also need the information to mount the shares. And right now, I'm lacking information for different Ceph file systems. So if it's called other than CephFS. So yeah, for me it's this whole path and information you get from Manila for a share is a bit cumbersome. So in general, I would love to see more information, also meta information, that it's easily processable by some scripts or yeah, other means, not only for humans.
Okay.
Yep. So I think the meta information part is also like a part of like one of the bug you reported, right, Elias?
Did I report the bug yet? I think
Oh,
I
yeah.
only wrote about it in the IRC chat, but yeah,
Yeah,
I will
that's
have
right.
to
That's
write
right.
a bug
Sorry.
report. Yeah.
I got confused with that. I mean, I had the I knew there was something, but I didn't remember if it was exactly the.
No, exactly. But when I read today the agenda, this is completely the same direction. So more information is needed for the operators, for the users, but also for automatization. So yeah, maybe I have to. Is there already some concrete implementation of this? Is there some merge requests
I think
to look at?
for the human readable export locations, there is the spec, but the implementation is still something that would need to be proposed. And for the other case, I think there is another thing we are planning for the next or upcoming cycles, which would be metadata for export locations, which would allow, like, to set more details or set more keys and values to the export locations. So that is something that could help as well. But like to this query, like editing the mount point name, I think it would be something tricky in case you already have a share created, and I'm not sure if it would be the best thing for us to let like a share be disrupted like that, especially when we do not know where the share is mounted. So yeah. I don't know. Gotham, do you have any opinion on this?
Not entirely on modifying existing shares, right? That's the problems that you guys are highlighting anyway. And there is no mechanism today, if you were to make any of these metadata modifications, that we are able to take it to the shared driver. It's not something we've supported because the way this was meant to work is a lot like Nova and Cinder as well, right? You create these objects and you're able to manage them and manipulate them only via the API over here. So it doesn't really matter what we end up naming the backend the objects and stuff. But I can see the use case, and both from the NetApp side as well as from Elias, as to be able to distinguish it elsewhere. And yeah, both are fine solutions, which is, I mean, I think we discussed a little bit of the CephFS use case in the thing yesterday, when we were, or rather on Tuesday, when we were talking about the metadata way of doing this, so that it can be programmatically consumed. And that would not be something that a human would have to do, right? When they're creating the share. They wouldn't have to specify anything. If the share is landing on a specific file system, we would know the name of the file system on this FFS side, and we would go ahead and add a metadata key value over there, suggesting the name of the file system. So somebody could, in theory, just automate on top of that, and that somebody in this case with Elias's use case was Manila CSI. So we can go ahead and add some hints in Manila CSI to match those file system names and so on. But the part about the human readable export paths has always been tempting too, and tempting in the sense of this, like some of the things that you've already thought about and called out here, such as how do you avoid collisions. We were writing on the thing that we would name everything with UUIDs and we would not run into collisions. But with something where you would allow a human to pick the export path name, you might run into collisions, and you would have to enforce some sort of a collision avoidance. And it would be best if we could do that at the API. And if that was the case, what are we actually doing to avoid the collision? So the suggestion I see is the project name. So it's and by project name, it would be the Keystone project name that we would get for the tenant, which I think is fine, except it is 255 characters. So you may be losing some amount of the human readability if something that big was to be encoded in the export path too. I don't know. That's one thing. And the other suggestion I had is maybe allow a prefix to be configured by an administrator in the share type. That way, if you're using a particular share type, you cannot have multiple collisions, of course, of the same stuff. And we will be able to detect it in the API, except of course an administrator can make mistakes and you can have multiple share types with the same prefix, but maybe we can avoid that too, right? The prefix has to be globally unique across our share types. That's a suggestion that I had for this. But if we were to go ahead and do this, I think if this one solves Elias's use case as well, I think it's more agnostic than the shared metadata solution that we have for for SFFS that we were brainstorming the other day. That's all the things that were running in my head about this.
Sadly, I was not there when you were discussing the shared metadata. So, but
no problem.
Also in this case, when you're exporting, like for SAP file system, the how is it called, project name custom export path. So in the CFFS case I was referring to, with CFFS differently named to CFFS, this information is now missing. So in the current, so I'm only using CFFS directly on my side. So you have the monitors there, you have the path, etc. But the users don't see which file system it is. You have to tell them and teach them beforehand. And yeah, that's not scaling. So I definitely, so it's not about project name custom export paths, but it's more in general giving more information out there, and in both machine and human readable form, because yeah, people using shares in all different forms, and yeah, and they're quite useful. So
yeah. So would you, in that case, prefer something like this, where we would, I mean, let's assume the prefix is customizable, and that would be a thing we would do with this stuff, and that prefix is something you set in your share types. And so as you were configuring in the old world, before you upgraded Manila, and you had that path prefix that you could put in the config file, but instead of doing that, you would have to do that as part of your share types now. And I mean, you'd get if you didn't specify a human readable export path when creating the share, you'd still get the same Manila making up a share name kind of a thing on the back end, but it will go with the prefix that you've picked in the share type. Would that solve your use case?
No, not really. So
Okay.
for me, it's about information how the mount is missing, because I would have to specify but this is only for ZFS, either with -OFS equals name, something like this, or with the new syntax so there's also this new syntax for Ceph mounting, kernel mounting.
I see. Okay.
Which would have included the keys and everything, and the file system. So there's, yeah. If you're aware of how to do it, it's no problem. But you need this knowledge, and this knowledge is for a user that just creates a share, and it's not obvious. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's for sure. Do you have an example of that mount command that you're having to use? Because I know there are I mean, different ways to do it with the kernel client and the Fuse client.
Yeah, with the kernel client, for the old syntax, it would mean an option -O for option, and then I think it's FS for file system equals and the file system name. So if it's called,
yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and that's not obvious. So yeah, because people don't see which file system it is. But yeah, that's a different topic to the prefixes. So I think the prefixes are also a good idea, and I wouldn't use the project name there, because the project name could have really weird letters in it. I don't know, can it be Unicode? So you have to escape it. It can have spaces inside, and so yeah, I think it's not the best thing for a prefix. So I would let the users choose this, and would check it in the database so that it's unique, so that no one else can create it the same prefix later on.
Right.
Yeah, but
Right.
that's
And encoding the project name would also mean encoding a little bit of the OpenStack information in there. So if somebody is trying to tell apart things in the back end, would have to probably consult the OpenStack API again to figure out who that is or what that is, kind of thing. Same problem,
also,
I think.
we have the same problem currently. So again, Ceph file system, you're creating users. So if the user already exists in the Ceph file system, you get an error, and you have to choose another user, one that doesn't exist, as in order to mount a Ceph file system directly via Manila. So
right, you're saying that's been a problem?
no, that's not the problem. That's the case.
That's a use case. Yeah, exactly.
If there's a conflict of because the name is already reserved, then yeah, error message, this is already reserved, and please pick another one. I think that's just fair.
Right.
Oh.
The prefix option needed for every backend, or it is at only one at Manila level we need that? It should have for every backend, right?
So the I'm sorry, I don't think I understand the backend part though.
I mean, okay.
And
Share
the reason,
server, okay. Yeah, share server, okay.
or in any yeah, you actually bring up a different point with the share server, this thing, because what really is the place to isolate the name would be at the share server level in case of DHS is true, and DHS is false. You just assume that there is one share server, and that's where the isolation needs to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So which is kind of where, I mean, because what's visible to the end user and to administrators is like share types. And that's where I was thinking, that's where you might want to add the prefix. Of course, that logic does not work well if you have share types that are too broad and can match multiple backends or multiple share servers. And then you'll have this thing of you're actually enforcing uniqueness across multiple backend instances where you don't need to be. I can see that argument, but without that, you tend to actually have to get some global enforcement across all of your tenants, which is a little more weirder, right? Like if you have a massive cloud with lots of tenants, and if you're coming up with common names, it starts getting annoying. Pretty much like the CEFFS access rules case. But in that case, there's little we can do to help it because it's built for security. And if you're not aware, the way the CEFX access rules work is you make up a name, a CEF user name, and once you provide access within your project to a given share, you can use that same user, for instance, to another share in the same project. But since you've picked that name, nobody else globally in OpenStack operating on that Ceph cluster can use that name anymore. So let's say my Ceph username that I've come up with is Saravanan. That's it. Like another organization cannot have a Saravanan as long as they're operating on the same Ceph cluster. That's like the limitation of that this thing, and we don't really surface that out of the API very well because we don't know that when we're creating the access rule. But what happens is when you reach the backend responds with a particular error code, and I think we set a user message. So it's an asynchronous failure that says you cannot use this CEFX username. Yeah. So I mean, we could do the same thing like that for this, but you can see how the user experience is not that good as good as you just want to create a share. You don't want to know later that it's going to fail because you just picked a wrong name. You want to know right away that the failure occurred, and so you can retry with a different name.
Yep. So are we good then with the share types approach or setting a prefix approach?
I think the second point is nullified, right? Because of we will have
Yeah.
configurable option and yeah. So yeah, you want to test that? Yeah.
Yeah, the
Open
second
core
point is
that point.
not valid when we talk about different scenarios here, right? So we have to decide on which one to take up. We can cut down the second point, and maybe we will need more discussion on this, or I just want to know which one we can go ahead with.
Feel free to propose it in the spec. I think that would be a good place to
Okay.
continue this discussion.
Okay.
That's one thing. And second, I think, I mean,
Yeah.
because Elias brings up that use case, and it is kind of related to this, but it's not. I'm a little more interested to dig in through that. So I'd like to continue brainstorming on that, Elias, if possible, and maybe even on this spec, if you could take a look as well.
Yeah, sure. We will continue it there. Thank you.
I will do so, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Elias. Thank you. The first one, anyway, we are not going to do it. That's what I understood. This first one is also will create a problem, right? If we have already mounted volumes.
Oh, you mean
So
the
not in the queries, the
Edit.
first one. Yeah.
right?
Yes. To conclude that.
How can someone edit the mount point name once
Yeah.
they've created it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So since you're
Okay.
going to create other problems such as
Yeah.
disruptive changes, and there's no
Okay.
good way to communicate that, I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm not against it personally, because I mean, maybe that is an operation you want to support eventually. But today, editing something in the share is a non-disruptive operation. So you would have
It
to
was an open
define
point.
some.
Yeah, that was an open point to discuss. Yeah, it's not a proposal. I think that we are good with
Yeah.
it. I mean, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, as long as there is no use case right now that needs it, we can punt that, I think.
Yeah. And yeah, the last one, coming to the impacts, there are a list of impacts that mentioned by the Carlos in the specs. You can open that once, Carlos. And I just made a point here saying that Python Manila client is deprecated, right? So only impact will be on the OpenStack client. Just wanted to give the info, that's all.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fair point. So I mean, I would qualify that with adding shell at the very end, because what we've deprecated is just the shell component of Python Manila client. Python Manila client, the repo
Yeah,
is
got
still
it,
where
got it.
everything goes.
Got it.
So-
Maybe shell. Yeah, yeah.
So that's
I
a
meant
big
that.
less work. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I mean, that's all from my side, and we will take that in the discussions. Yeah. Thank you, Gautam, Carlos, Elias, and Sarvanam. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks, for bringing it up. It was great. Good to raise awareness of this again. I mean, it's been a couple of releases already since we merged this specs. So
Yes.
yeah, good
Yeah.
to remember all of this. Thanks for picking this up as well.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. So I think we can go to our next topic then, which is backup and restore implementation for Manila shares. So Girish.
Yeah. Hello everyone. This is Girish here from NetApp Bangalore, India. Yeah, Carlos, yeah, please. So today I'm going to talk about the backup solution for Manila and especially for the NetApp storage. So before going through the backup solution for the Manila, I just want to talk about the Cinder backup solution because we follow the same solution what we have the backup solution available in the Cinder. So Cinder, so I just went through the code actually and how it's work. So based on that, and I have written. Please feel free to stop me wherever I'm wrong actually. So might be few places I just put some assumption or I copied from some specs also, which is written by I think Kirna. So in the Cinder backup solution, so we have one additional service that's called the backup service we have added in the Cinder, which is used for to do all the backup solution. So normally we put the driver name in the cinder.conf and we initialize the driver once you restart the services, and we put the other parameter like NFS export path or share path location in that path. So after that, if you want to create the backup, what actually we do, we just mount the NFS share path in our W stack, and then we copy the data from the volume to our NFS share location. So in case of the restore, what we do actually, we just read the backup data from the NFS share, which is in the format of file, and then we write back to the volume. For deletion, we just normally delete the NFS share. So this is the workflow we have in the Cinder. So because this feature means similar feature we want to implement in the Manila. So initially we follow the same approach. I think still we have the same approach. So according my understanding, what we have currently in the Manila is, so the first thing is this NFS backup driver. So this has implemented in Bobcat release, and we are following the same solution what we have in the what we have implemented for the Cinder. And CLI and API support is already added. I think this code already we have merged in the Bobcat release. And this is the generic solution which can be work for any vendor. This is and it's based on the mounting the share and copying the data and then unmounting. So this is the workflow. I think we are following to implement our NFS based backup solution. So this is, I just copied from the one of the specs which Kiran has written. So here we are just making sure that share is available, and then we are giving those on both the share, means that source share and that NFS export path share. So the proper permission like read access for the primary share and the write access for the backup share. Then we mount the both the share in one of the data service node, and then we copy the data from the primary share to our backup share, and then we unmount the data. So this is the workflow we have. And so I looked on the code, actually. Even I just try to add um, one more parameter in our local.conf file, but I did not see any backup service running for the Manila. So this is the one open question I think I have here. Okay. So this is my understanding as of now. So we are using that mount, copy, and unmount logic to copy the data from one share to other share. And what we can do additionally, so as we know that most of the vendor has implemented their backup solution within the storage devices, and the above solution might not be efficient for them. So like NetApp using the snapshot feature actually for backup the data for the storage data, that is only for the storage level, and that is more faster and more quick compared to the whatever the NFS based solution we have currently available here. So this is we might be going to implement, or might be we need to have further discussion with the other folks who has already implemented this generic solution, and what is their expectation, and those all things actually we can discuss here, or might be we need further discussion for this one. And these are the open question I have this one. So Cinder has the backup service running to all the backup operation. Is Manila has the same service running? So just want to know from the expert actually who has worked on this feature and who has implemented the backup feature in the Manila. And
Basically, there is no. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi.
yes, Kiran.
yeah,
Okay. So basically, there is no backup specific service in Manila.
Mhm.
The spec that is being written and the code that is being implemented was with the intention of providing the backup API and the sample NFS driver. So the NFS driver, as you said and described, works in a simple way of mount, copy, and unmount.
Right.
Now, if any vendor has to do the implementation of backup, they must be using some vendor specific methods. And as a NetApp, what I believe that it will be the implementation in Manila share service. So in Manila share component, there is a NetApp driver, right?
Right.
So you have to kind of do the implementation as a part of Manila share service, and then add your custom functions to perform the actual backup functionality. So how that will be done is completely kind of relies on you. You can internally use mount, copy, unmount, or you can use any other snapshot-based mechanism, like anything. So that is something I cannot comment on. What I can say is that the implementation will go into the Manila share service, NetApp, on-tap driver that is being that is present currently, and the implementation is completely vendor specific. What you have at this stage is just the APIs that are working for the generic NFS driver.
Okay. So so for the generic NFS driver, this feature work for the Manila, like we have the Cinder. So it's working right now. Actually, did somebody tested that? Like
Yeah,
copying the data from.
Yeah, I have tested that. It works for the it works for the Manila. In the Manila data service. I mean, if you look into the spec, and you go to the actual topic, you will find the implementation in of the Manila, the pull request. I think Manila pull request or the Manila client pull request, either of the pull request, I have mentioned the steps the way I have tested this on the dev stack.
Okay.
So what at the higher level I can tell you is that create some sample share, let's say 10 GB, and use that sample share as your backup location.
Okay.
Right? Or if you have any other backup location, it's fine. But if you are testing on the dev stack, create some sample share and then use that sample share export location as a mount point. And then you have to fill that mount points and information of the host server into the conf files and restart those services like Manila data service. And then you have to trigger the backup. And then you can mount the backup location, or basically you can mount the backup location and see the content from the share is being copied into the backup location, and the restore works the reverse way.
Okay. Okay. So we have already that copy code available in our Manila, so it's working for the generic driver. And what is the expectation will be that we need to implement the same using the NetApp technology, or we need to enhance, means we need to add our means logic in the shared driver to implement the backup for this NetApp specific thing, right?
Right. So if I am the user who is not using the Manila data service or the NFS driver, or if I have only one backend, let's say NetApp, and tomorrow if I have to offer this backup solution to the customer, how that solution will work is something has to be decided by NetApp and implemented.
Okay.
Can I jump in if you don't mind? A bit connected with this, at CERN, we are also interested in the backup implementation in Manila. And at the moment, we are taking a look into extending it to support an internal backup service that our storage colleagues run based on Restic. And something we will need that maybe is similar to this vendor-specific approach is that we wouldn't rely on this mount, copy and mount, but the actual backup will be delegated to this external service. From the implementation I see, everything is very coupled with the concept of this mount, copy, and mount, but I see there is a flag in the backup driver implementation that says use data manager equals true. So our backup driver will be don't use the data manager yet. I will implement it myself. But this flag is not honored in the code at all. So basically, it was like maybe implemented as a reference, like, okay, this might be implemented maybe in the future, or this was something that missed the review. But
no, not the data. So basically, you have to provide the backup options. If you provide the backup options, then based on the backup option, then the internal driver implementation will pick up. And absence of backup option will go to the data service.
Because I was trying to understand, find my way around the code, and creeping for this particular use data manager is not used anywhere. It's just defined in the backup driver, but if I set that to true, I think that will be ignored. Or maybe I'm mistaken, I don't know.
No, you don't need to define anything for the data manager. Data manager is defined as a by default. So if you provide the backup options will assume that the backup option is being provided for some kind of driver which is supported in Manila share service. For example, the current implementation that we are discussing, let's say NetApp. If you don't provide anything into the backup option, then it is assumed that you are using the existing sample implementation for the testing purpose. So this will go to the Manila data and it will add the topic Manila data into the share or the backup structure. And this topic is then used for all consecutive operation on that backup object. For example, if you have to delete, if you have to restore, that topic will decide whether it is going to the Manila data service or Manila share service. Currently, there is nothing implemented in Manila share service. What we have is in Manila data service only, the sample NFS driver.
Yeah, right.
I'm not 100% sure if I get the full picture.
Yeah,
so
I think I understand a little bit of what you're asking, Luis. So I think if you define a different driver, the idea was to introduce this concept of backup drivers in the data service. So so it will be working just like shared drivers in our in the way we would do it. So you would create a different module that would implement your backup driver. And I also am not sure what that flag meant, which is using the data manager. I probably have to look again, or maybe Kiran knows what this thing was meant for. But if you were to implement a backup driver, then the data service would still be in charge of, initiating the actions.
Yeah, that is totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so but when it comes to creating the backup, it's not going to go mount the share and copy the data. It's just going to hand it off to the backup driver to do whatever it means for creating the backup.
Yeah.
And the same thing for the other options that are there. I think so there's this really small skeleton out here that I'm just going to drop in over here on the Etherpad on line 37. So this skeleton of a backup driver was meant for just that, which is, I mean, I don't think we've even, so we were discussing something else, and I want to get to that specifically with your query of how does this work with the CERN RESTIC driver implementation. But initially what we were thinking was we would have a backup and a restore and a delete and a get backup info. That's the simple driver interface that's currently there. But of course, yeah, let's get to the complicated part later. So presume that you're going to write a Python module which would implement these interfaces. The data manager will call these interfaces because that's the driver that's configured in that deployment. That's the idea. Pretty much like a share driver does today and manages a share backend.
That is the idea. I get it, but the current implementation is assuming that the driver just gives you a mount point.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Because this thing is not, as far as I can see, if you go to the data manager, yeah, and you take a look to this, I think it's run backup _ run backup or something like that. It's basically just assuming that it's only asking for get info to the driver, that assumes that there is a template for the mounts, and it goes ahead with it.
Yeah, I see.
So there should be something like this. What we are hacking in our site implementing is if use data manager, yeah, do that. Otherwise, just delegate that to the driver.
So
yeah,
you're asking this backup mount temp location is something you need to add into the conf. I think it might be having some default values. Is this something you're talking about at line number 502?
Of the line number 502 of what?
So from the screen share, right?
Oh, I see.
That couldn't apply to what I'm mentioning because in my case, there is no mount point at all. I would love that portion of the code to say, if not using data manager, just call the driver to run the backup, to create the backup. Same thing for this create backup continue that reports the status, the progress, I mean, to also, again, call maybe the interface of the backup driver should be extended to have this concept of what is the status of this particular backup to report the progress by the driver, and not in the current implementation that is assuming that is a progress of a copy.
Yeah, in the current implementation, the progress is the progress of copy, because it is kind of sharing the code with the migration.
So it's like everything is almost there. So it's just a matter if we go into the direction that making this more flexible and honoring these flags in the driver and calling the driver, for us, this will be fantastic, because then we will just extend it on our side, call the module, the driver, and that will be it.
Yeah, thanks. I wasn't aware of this, but does that make sense, Kiran? Right now, we have the backup driver interface defined, but those driver interfaces are not called at the right times where we're actually just doing a bunch of operations in the data manager itself instead.
Okay. So this backup driver that you are talking about, is it under the Manila data component
No,
itself?
this will be a backup driver that is not connected to any other server backend in Manila. This is imagine a custom thing that we have at CERN. It's based on REST, but anyway, it's a modification common service that it will be calling some APIs, so it has nothing to do with anything else in Manila.
Okay. Okay, fine. I think if it needs improvement, then we should do it. And I'd like to see the pull request once you raise it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we will propose something to modify these bits. I don't know if they will need your input because we are not super experts in the code. But yeah, the idea will be basically that, so to honor that flag and in all these parts of the manager to just call the driver.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just another comment comparing Manila and Cinder. The only operation issue I would say here is that the fact of having, because if I understand correctly, this will be within the same service, all the functionality. So if for some reason you want to scale the backup agents in a different way as you could do with Cinder, it's something that with Manila you couldn't do at the moment. It's a start, but
So I'm curious about that. So what is it that you wouldn't be able to? You mean like you would like the ability to schedule to different backup backends?
No, I mean if you, because you would have well, yeah, I don't know if some use cases people will be interested on having other maybe different kind of machines or services behind for the backup agents or between the services. I don't know. Yes, I have to iterate to think a bit more on that front.
No, you're right. Like one use case I already see is, I mean, right now we're still in the infancy of a backup feature.
Yeah.
So for us, we just thought of that one aspect of having a backup driver, but this is not really represented anywhere, right? If you were to have multiple backup drivers, you would create multiple data services with its own backup driver, configuration, just like how you would do multiple Manila share services today. But you need something to decide where the backup would go based on your backup options and so on. So I would ideally would put something like that through the scheduler, and report these multiple backup services to the scheduler as well. That way you get this scalability aspect that we don't currently have. We just assume today that there is one data manager that's going to somehow decide what to do.
And this is something that we are facing with Cinder, because Cinder has this just one single backup driver. And for us, it will be handy to have multiple ones because maybe you are doing backups to different places, etc., etc. And
right.
If, as we are starting with this one, if we can have that ability in the Manila backups to be able to define different ones, because maybe it's going to be in a different data center or a different location.
Yeah, it's possible,
each of them,
right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it's awesome to have backups now.
Yeah. Yeah, all Kiran's work last cycle. So thanks for that, Kiran. But I guess, I mean, if we were to improve this in a way, I'd like some sort of an RFE for this so that we can track it. And I guess what Kiran was interested to do was to provide this initial implementation, right? And the next step was to improve this with the backup drivers and then with the shared drivers. The shared drivers part is what the NetApp folks seem to be interested to implement at this point. Is that right, Girish?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gautam. Yeah.
Okay. So you're not looking at a backup driver. You're actually looking at the shared driver implementation to extend and become to support backup operations. Correct?
Yeah, right.
So actually here, right, we need a few more options, because if you look at even from technology perspective, right, So we need to provide destination and volume, and there is a backup policy. These things are there. If share driver provides all of them, right, then we can stick to whatever is available here. And okay, maybe if this is not good enough, right, and then we have to look at other option, Gautam. Okay, but for now we'll stick with whatever is there, whatever Kiran has implemented, right. We'll try to follow that. Okay. If you can accommodate everything within that, then we are good. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I can see what you mean.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't look a whole lot different, then it still makes sense as a share this thing, because
Okay.
it's like the advantaged migration implementation. There are a few things that the share driver needs, but we figured it was not a whole lot. And usually the share driver would need the same amount of configuration as you would need if you were to implement a dedicated migration driver. So that's why it made sense to just unify that and make the share manager itself run through those migration operations. But and also the assumption that a migration when it's advantaged, or even a backup when it's advantaged, which is that a vendor is doing it with with shares that are already somewhere in the vendor's purview of things, like from one ONTAP backend to another ONTAP backend or something like that. The assumption in the share manager is that these are not long running operations, but that may not be true with the backup driver implementations. It's possible that they are long-running operations that are running on the same node as the data service. So you could try to put the data service on a dedicated node that has better resources to handle that kind of load, of concurrent backups and things like that. Whereas in the share manager, we just expect to hand it off to a backend storage system, and we expect that to happen somewhere else with probably periodic callbacks to say, okay, is this done or not? We're envisioning something like that with the backup drivers too, which is, I mean, let's say in Luis's case, this RESTIC implementation is running on a dedicated node, and we have to talk to that dedicated node and get that start a backup, check on its progress, complete a backup, and same thing with restore, start a restore, check on its progress, complete a restore. But in general, what we were planning on was that data service node is going to be responsible for everything. So which is why it needs to be resource intensive. Support resource intensive activities. That was the idea.
Okay.
So there's, I don't know, I would say if you were to envision something where I want to create a generic backup driver for NetApp, then the backup driver implementation would be where you would look at. And that way, you actually have a backup driver that can take anything, right? So for example, somebody has CephFS and NetApp and Dell EMC in their environments, and they're trying to back up a share, and the backup goes to a NetApp ONTAP somewhere, right? And that happens because there is a backup driver and not a shared driver implementation of this.
Okay, so that kind of, okay, maybe we can discuss more on this, Gautam. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, we don't think like it can be a broader thing, but yeah, we are looking at only within NetApp, and if the existing solution, whatever Kiran has coded, right, and if you're able to override those methods and implement those methods for our NetApp driver specific, right, and we should be good. And the only thing is, we thought there are 4 more options needed. Yeah, we can configure them, like maybe more extra spec, right? And so with that, we will see that. Okay, yeah. I don't think so. We need a new backup driver, but yeah, that question also was there initially, but we removed it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's there, right? Line number 41. Line number 41 is all about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So this backup options field is being provided as a part of API call. So you can add the options, as many options as you want, and use them to carry out the backup operation.
Yeah, sure. So what I feel actually, so I think I need to spend some more time on the existing solution, backup solution we have in the Manila. So probably I will connect you guys first with the Kiran or might be Luis. And once I will be clear, actually, I will come with my approach and get it review from the Gautam and Carlos, or you guys also. So that I
Kiran
was
and
thinking.
Maurice.
Hmm?
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
connect with Kiran and
Yeah,
Maurice.
Morris.
And,
Yeah,
make sure-
exactly. Yeah. So I need some more time to understand this this feature. Need to go through the existing code and all things.
Awesome.
So yeah. I think last question. I think it's not valid. Means the last question is SIP share is coming to picture. Means with the generic solution where we are just mounting the share actually, because SIP share I don't think we can mount in the OpenStack because it's only for Windows. So if you are implementing the NetApp, all the logic in the share services actually. So I think it's not and using the NetApp technology to implementing the backup solution. So I think last open question is not valid.
I think it is valid actually, and you bring up that so right now we have a generic NFS backup data copy thing, right?
Right.
It's the same thing for migration. We can't handle any other protocols at the moment, and so that would be a good extension for the generic backup solution to have. To handle other popular protocols like CIFS and CFFS and so on, but it's not related to what your the NetApp advantaged implementation can be, because you can decide to support whatever right off the bat, right? But the NFS driver that Kiran's implemented is purely for NFS shares.
Yeah.
So
Right.
maybe
That's-
this is also again about missing metadata for the data for automatically mounting the stuff, or so for NFS it's quite
Yeah,
obvious how
you
to
might
do it.
need, yeah, we would need to invent that for, let's say, if we were to implement this FFS backup part of this.
Yeah, so for me it sounds like this whole topic about metadata for automation for shared data, how to mount it, how to actually access it. It's going all over the code or different use cases. So also here in the backup case, this could be reused again. So if you know how to mount it, you can back up it.
Right. Elias, can I ask for, I mean, as I'm seeing that with you, like you're saying it's all over the place. Could you please report a bug against Manila? Because I have a feeling like, this is a bigger issue that we're not really testing with the Ceph driver. Because in our test environments and most of our deployments so far, we've only seen folks create a single CephFS file system on their Ceph cluster. We have seen in the wild people use multiple file systems, but we've not really seen this sort of a problem being reported before. So is it possible to please report it?
I will do so. I will do so. No, for me it was just in the moment I'm creating a new OpenStack instance with some different network drivers and a few lessons learned. And initially I was naive and just said, okay, I'm doing a new Ceph file system and everything would be fine because it's supported. But then in the end I saw, oh, my users won't like this. So because they don't know the name of it, it's nowhere shown. Then
Right.
next thing I was doing Kubernetes clusters on top of it, and I saw again, okay, it's possible to specify in the storage driver which file system this is and so on, but it's extra work, and if someone else than me is doing it, will possibly fail because
Yeah,
it doesn't have the information.
you don't
so,
know if the
yeah. Yeah, I will write a bug report about this, and yeah. And I've already looked a bit into the code, so for me it's yeah, don't have that much time for development, but maybe I can yeah, provide something.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the bug report will be really helpful, and then
Yeah.
you know, we can tag you in case we're fixing this, and you can provide feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Girish.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Girish. All right. Is there something else you guys would like to add to this topic? Okay, taking silence as no. Thank you very much for bringing this up. This was a really great discussion, and it was nice to see everyone's take on this. Yeah, I didn't manage to keep it up with the notes because I was paying a lot of attention in the discussions, but I'll add more notes later to regarding what was discussed here, and then we can continue following up on this. So thanks. Next topic we have is the first part of Tech Debt Roundup, but I think we could use a break. I know you're running a bit late on the schedule, but I think the break could still be important because we have been like 1 hour discussing some technical topics. So let's take a 5-minute break, and then we can get back at I think 15:04. Yeah, no, sorry, 15:14. Sorry, doing a lot of math. Okay, so see you in 5
Put it
minutes.
off, Carlos. Be generous.
Yeah,
So
okay. No.
I
Get to
think,
5.
I will leave now because it's on holiday here in Austria today. But I
Oh,
will
yeah.
come and join tomorrow again.
Oh, yeah.
Was
Sure.
seeing
No,
you.
thanks for joining us
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
very
on
much
a
for
holiday.
joining.
Enjoy the rest of the holiday.
Yeah,
Bye.
enjoy the day.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so 15:15 then. See you. Awesome. So we are back with Tech Debt Roundup. We divided this into 2 parts. So Gotham, where's yours? Yeah, so I just needed to make sure that Gotham was already back, but not sure. Hey,
Hello. Sorry,
no worries,
I
man.
just noticed the time. I was late by a minute.
No worries.
Hey, so I can take you through the next topic. Is that where we were starting?
Yep. So Lord yours.
Thank you. So this one, we occasionally visit Tech Debt at our PTGs, and this is the first part of it, and we're going to be talking about more tomorrow. It's a bunch of unimplemented, or rather partially implemented specs that we should probably be talking about and figuring out what to do next about them, and what's you know, about each of these. Maybe we'll have different concerns. Some of them may not be related anymore, and we might be able to close them. So today, I guess, a couple of things on the table for us. One is testing. This one's easy, I think. So this is called a, I mean, so this was an extension to the scenario tests. Carlos, if you want to click on that spec. So as you're aware, we have a bunch of scenario tests in our Tempest plugin, and our distinction of what differentiates an API and a scenario test is that a scenario test is involving things outside of Manila. And so this definition of a scenario actually changes if you're working on other OpenStack projects, right? But for the way we've implemented things, it is if it involves a virtual machine to mount the share, to write some data, etc., that becomes a scenario test. And sometimes it may not be that you're mounting the share, but we might still end up calling it a scenario test because we're involving some other external third-party service in our case. And so there were a bunch of interesting test cases that we had planned a while ago. And many of those are, in various degrees of completion, but most of those are partially completed. So the ones that are partially completed, these are really easy to complete all the way, right? So the scenario test design was changed with this spec, but the test itself is doing something slightly different. So, for example, if we were to say we want to test that the expectation that when a share is created, it is not mountable by anybody. And then when you provide create an access rule, maybe you create it with a read-only rule, and then you should be able to mount the share, but you shouldn't be able to write some data with it into it. And then you can go delete the access rule, swap it out with a read-write access rule. You should be able to mount the share, but also read-write with it, and so on. So these steps are defined in those test cases, except the eventual test that's there in Manila Tempest plugin today probably does not do one or two of those steps within that test. That's what a partially implemented status means. And if you click through those things, you kind of see what test is actually implementing it partially, and so on. So you can actually see the differences and things like that. So that's where we've kind of left this specification. There are a bunch of tests that implementation never started, and that was mainly replication. There are 4 replication tests, I think, that we never got around to writing the scenario tests. So I wanted to bring back the focus on this spec and say it's good time to finish this spec. It's been around for quite a long time, and for somebody that is testing with stuff, these test cases are still very valuable, because they enforce some unwritten contracts, that and unenforceable contracts between Manila and the share driver, for instance, right? So it's not very easy for Manila to determine some things that the share driver ought to do with every share. But with a test like this, you know that it's whether it's maintained or not. That's the idea. So it's good if we go ahead and complete it. So I guess my ask over here is, if there's anyone here that is just looking to spend a couple of hours and learn how to write a Manila Tempest test, this will be a great way to introduce yourself to it, because the test structure, the test plan has already been written for you. It would probably be converting that and giving it a shot, and of course improving it, because I'm sure when we write the test plan, there's some things that we don't consider, and that we eventually see as surprises when the eventual test is implemented and so on. But sometimes those surprises are bugs, and that's the intention behind writing these tests, and proving that we all of our shared drivers actually adhere to all of those unwritten contracts. So that's the first spec. Any questions, concerns, folks that already feel like, hey, this is something you can do? All right, silence. So this is, though, I don't see Liron and Vida on the call. This is something that I wanted their opinion on as well, because they've been working quite a bit on the Manila Tempest plugin stuff, and they might actually have some ideas. I mean, because when I'm looking at this, I feel like the tests are relevant, but it's possible that, the same functionality is already being tested elsewhere or in a different way, but we just have to update the spec and finish it up, kind of thing. A spec like this is in a multi-release place just because of this, that it has, 12 or so different test cases. And it's going to take us a while to get through and to support them all. Another important thing is if I think I only see the NetApp folks on the call with respect to third-party CI. You should be running these scenario tests. These are really helpful in qualifying your driver. So if there are any issues with them, please surface those issues so that we can fix them generically. But the general recommendation for all drivers is to not just do the API testing, because the scenario tests bring out behavior testing, which we don't get with incompleteness with the API tests that we have. So I'm going to take an AI for this to chat with Liron and ask for it's possible that we might even, if we have some time this cycle to run a hackathon, this might be a good candidate, right? Like it might be something that is easy enough for folks to put together.
Yeah.
Or even work in a team and finish.
Yeah, I think there's, and just to add some more, like we have already some drivers doing replication, like the first party drivers, that will make it like easier to help you implement those, because I mean you already have the driver being set up, we already have the jobs for those drivers, so it's just a matter of like trying to work on the tests and also running them. So yeah, it's a very, very important thing. I remember at some point, NetApp was running scenario tests. I'm not sure if they are still doing that, but those are really, really useful in case you want to catch bugs early, because that's a good way for us to test all of those operations and integrations with the other services as well.
Agreed. All right. Any comments, concerns about this? If not, I want to actually move to the last spec and then come back to the middle one, because I actually have no idea about the middle one, and perhaps some others will. So let's talk through the last one, because I have some notes at least on those. So we had a spec here that talked about the mechanism to prevent race conditions, and this was written a whole era ago when we were doing different things differently. But it was written to serve as a guideline, and it had some recommendations, some concrete recommendations on where we have races at the moment, and how we can address them. And one of the things was we were doing some things, and we still are in some cases, where we begin an action, and the action is supposed to actually prevent some other actions to be taken simultaneously, or things go wrong, right? For example, even today you can do these two things simultaneously. You can snapshot a share and you can delete it. And you can, if you'd figured out a way to send these two requests at the same exact time, it's possible you can mess up with the with either the file system or the expectation that Manila has that once a share has been snapshotted, unless the snapshots are cleaned up, the share cannot be deleted. So there are some these things that'll evidently go wrong because we are not preventing these incompatible actions to occur together. And so that was one of the concrete recommendations here, which is to create a microstate called snapshotting, And that would mean that when the snapshot is being created, we would transition the state of the share out of available such that any other action on that share is prevented for the duration that the snapshot has to be taken. For the most part, snapshots are supposed to be instantaneous, or rather have traditionally been instantaneous with most backends. And so this has not been a problem. It may be even in the wild, unless you're trying to do something devious, you're not running into this. But it's one gap that we do have in the driver in the implementation right now. So what we could do is we could actually take this spec out of the multi-release thing and just add an RFE request just for that snapshotting state. And we'd be able to, continue working on that. I don't want to keep this spec lying around. What I would rather do is have documentation in the contributor doc that talks about how you write code such that you're not, you're preventing race conditions from the get-go, user-initiated actions, and how you can coordinate them. So that's the first missing piece. The other one is it also suggests using distributed locking instead of using local file locks. We have, I mean, tens of different places where we are locking critical sections in the code with the help of a file lock. And the way that works is it just creates a file on the local file system, and as you're entering into that critical section, if that file exists, then you wait. As a thread that's come in to process that particular thing, it waits. It's told to wait until that file is deleted, such that it can go create another file and then enter the critical section in the code. So, which is great. This is there is going to be always a use case for critical sections in our code, but the problem there is we are limiting them to using local files, and the way that should work, in case like you have a service that can be spawned in multiple places, like let's say like the API or the scheduler. If you have local file locks, they don't provide much, much of the critical section, isolation that you really want. So that's we've known this for a while, and we introduced a framework to do distributed locks, and it uses a OpenStack library called tools, which can connect to any number of lock management backends, right? Like people in the wild have been using it with Redis, with Zookeeper, and even a database lock, or maybe in the worst case a file lock too. But not a distributed file lock, but a local file lock as well. So it provides a one-to-one backwards compatibility with our existing system. That is, if you didn't choose to define a tools backend, you would end up with a local file locking mechanism. So that's one more thing that's called out in the spec, saying if you are writing critical sections, think about distributed systems and distributed services. Do not rely on the fact on the idea that your service is running, all of your services are running on a single node, or have access to a local file locking, storage space. And I think in the past, one of the ways that you deploy a distributed system is still have something shared between them. And that's where people have been putting the lock folder. You can customize it in Manila, but we wanted to get away from that, get away from requiring a shared file system to run your shared file system service, right? That's just the thing underneath it. And this is also one of the things that is preventing the Manila share service to be able to be active. Because we are using local file locks a bunch of places, and in many times in the driver code and so on. So that's the two pieces of things that is left on this specification. Any thoughts, concerns, folks that want to take this up or something like that? I do have a suggestion. I was going to try to close this, like I was saying, and create RFEs for the two things. There is an RFE for the distributed locking thing already. It's been punted from cycle to cycle, but it exists, and we're probably looking for somebody to pick that work up. And we would just create another RFE to do the part about snapshotting, the state change around snapshotting. And then that would mean that this spec is superseded, and we just go ahead and push it out of the multi-release thing. All right. Thanks, Carlos. But any questions, concerns about these?
I think it's a good thing to implement because I mean it's very useful when we have those microstates for the access rules at least. So yes, I think for snapshots it is going to be like a very good addition. And honestly, like it doesn't feel like a whole lot of things would change at this point. It's mostly like we would need to go to the specific places that we are already updating the snapshot. So I'm starting the snapshot creation now, and I already have all of the information I need. I have the shares names, I have everything. So I can just go ahead and update that. So I can update the share status. So it doesn't feel like a whole amount of work to do. And it's going to be like of a huge benefit, and we will be able to move this back forward. For the tools, yes, it's the coordination stuff. Yes, it's another very important thing to add. But yeah, it feels we are very close, and the snapshotting part aspect of this, it's kind of like a good feature in case you are interested of like touching to other parts that's not like, oh, only APIs or small bug fixes. This would be a very nice RFE to implement, test, and also to have like a very good outcome of for this. So yes, it's very encouraged that if you have like the interest on working on this, we can assist you. You can ping us, and yes, it's gonna be a very valuable thing to have in the community. So yeah.
Agreed. Awesome. That's the plan then, to create that RFE, and we can bring it up at a weekly meeting. In case somebody is keen on it, they can go ahead and claim that. The last one, and this is one where I was reading through the spec and I was not clear what is not done. And this is because it's been a while, and we may have moved past the use cases and the proposed changes that are there in this specification. But while we have Felipe here, that might be something that he might know what's going on. Did we lose some capabilities along the way, or did we defer them for a different release? And is that why this is open? I'm picturing Felipe is looking at the spec and he's like, "What? I wrote this. It's been a yeah." This has been around for a while. It doesn't just have to be Felipe. I think one of the, I mean, this is an NetApp feature that was also added alongside it. So has there been any user feedback on top of what's existing? So from what I recall, there is an ability now to have multiple subnets in the same share network AZ. And there's an ability to update those subnets, which is basically add a new subnet.
That's what I remember as well.
And before you do the add, you can do a dry run of the stuff, right? That's how this stuff works.
Yeah, just like the other operations with updating security services as well, like you can try to anticipate if that will be something that's going to be accepted and applied to all of the backends or not before you actually send the request. Right. Okay, yeah, we can likely use one of the one topic in the one of the upstream meetings and try to circle back on this. Get some time to take a look at what's actually implemented and what's left. But
Right.
yeah, it's curious, like it's still a release independence thing. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. So let's do that. We're not sure what that is. So let's go ahead and discuss it at the weekly meeting. That'll be a wrap.
Awesome. Thanks, Gautam. All right. So yeah. Oh, sorry, I was thinking a lot. So yeah, thanks for bringing this up. Like this tech that's this tech that items they have been a topic for us for a while. But I mean, at least for these, it doesn't feel like we are that far from getting finished, and doesn't seem to be like a whole lot of work to get them done. So if you are interested on tackling some of these, I think they are very interesting technical challenges for us to get like more understanding and knowledge in some parts of the code base, specifically like the Tempest one, which is going to be proven like as a good value, not only for the community, but also everyone doing CI will be able to also benefit from this. So if you're interested, please take a look at this. And yeah, the last one, let's talk about it in the upstream meeting. Okay, so we have one other topic, which is Barbican integration, using Manila to do the encryption key base managed by Barbican and NewShare. So we are running a bit late. We have 19 minutes until we need to go to the Cinder meeting, to the Cinder PTG, where we have the cross-project session. But
yeah, I'll try to kind of wrap up as soon as possible. Can you open the specs?
Yeah, sure. But if we don't have enough time, don't worry. Like we can go to the meeting and we can make sure that we have some more time to discuss that over the week. So we can start the day tomorrow by continuing to address these, or depending if the Cinder session ends a bit earlier, we can get back to this room and continue discussing it, because we had scheduled until the hour, the top of the hour, the next hour. So I think we are good. I think I just got a ping from Rajat, but we could get started here, and then we can likely go to the Cinder session in the scheduled time and continue as I suggested us to. How does that sound?
Okay. I mean, let me first continue. If there is anything pending, then I'm not sure whether I'll be able to join again after some break or something. But for the time being, let me continue.
Yeah, sure. Awesome. Please go ahead.
Okay, so basically Cinder today or for a long time support the encryption of volume. Something similar use case is being needed here to offer the share encryption. So I have raised this spec in order to get the approval of APIs for the share encryption. So Cinder currently supports only one way of share encryption where you create volume type and then you associate encryption information with that volume type. And then whenever you create a volume using that volume type, you basically get your volume encrypted. Cinder mostly talks with Barbican through the Castellan, and it basically gets the encryption key ID for the particular volume and keep that key ID in that volume and pass this information to the NOVA. And NOVA then perform the actual encryption, I think with the help of libword when it does the attach of volume. So with respect to Manila, we don't have such a complicated scenario. What we have is basically the share encryption with the help of share type. So currently we are not going to add any new APIs, but we are basically going to, I mean, there will be new APIs, but these APIs will enhance the existing share type where we will provide this information, the encryption information with the share type, and this encryption information is being associated with the share type. So whenever any share is being created using this particular share type, if it contains the encryption information, the share will be encrypted. If it doesn't, then share won't be encrypted. So what I'm thinking, so this is the one way of encryption. Another way that we want to allow encryption is user providing the encryption reference itself. So what user can do is they can save their encryption key in the Barbican and they can provide this Barbican key reference to do the encryption. And I have added the scenarios in the spec where if user is using the encryption share type as well as encryption ref while creating the share, the encryption reference will take a preference over the share type. So what happens? So this is at the API layer. So in the first scenario where we have all this encryption information associated with the share type, whenever a share is being created using this encryption based share type, what Manila API layer probably do is it will talk with a Castellan to provide all this encryption information and get the key ID, encryption key ID. So we need to configure the key manager. So we can configure like Castellan as a key manager, and then this key ID is being provided to the backend driver. So in this case, I am assuming the NetApp ONTAP driver. So it will be provided to the NetApp ONTAP driver, and this NetApp ONTAP implementation, the APIs that NetApp will provide to support the encryption from the user key should have the ability to talk with the Barbican, and from that key ID, it will fetch the key data and perform the encryption. And in the second case, we have the key reference. So again, ONTAP driver will talk with the Barbican, and from the key reference, it fetches the key data and perform the encryption. So in both cases, Manila will just provides a way for user to allow the encryption of share. It is not, so encryption can be performed like at a front end or back end. With this spec in mind, we are not considering the front end implementation. Basically, Manila is not going to do any kind of encryption. It will be the backend driver, and the backend driver, as in not even the backend driver that is being coded as a part of Manila, but the actual ONTAP filer or the own driver will internally perform the encryption, thereby talking with Barbican. So this is the high level picture that we have for the encryption. With this in mind, I have provided the information in the spec, the information related to what kind of tables will be there, the new columns into the existing tables, and etc. And also the APIs. Yeah, so this comment like those, so basically this encryption information is associated with the share type ID. So we need to store the share type ID in the encryption. The third table is used in case encryption is done by encryption reference provided by the user instead of encryption share type. For example, if encryption reference is any HTTP link that is being provided, then that is being passed to the NetApp as it is, and then the NetApp will talk with the Barbican using that link. Or basically, in Barbican terms, it is a secret. So it will kind of fetch the secret information using that reference, and that data will be used for the encryption.
So a quick question on this. I want to think about the Manila API side, but before that, the concerning thing that I do see over there, and I was commenting on your spec as well, is the way this. I mean, usually shared drivers don't talk to other OpenStack services, right? OpenStack services talk to other OpenStack services. So shared drivers are part of the OpenStack service, yes, but they don't really have a mechanism to do that. So this would be better done as an implementation in the in one of the the core microservices of Manila itself. So I would presume you have a Barbican client layer that is going to make a call to Barbican API, and with whatever user provided information that we have in hand, we would query that secret on Barbican and hand whatever the information we have to the backend driver to do this the encryption or decryption, or whatever the use case may be. Right? Is that fair understanding, or were you picturing something else, and that's why you were doing the you were suggesting this was a NetApp driver thing?
So I think for this, in the first use case or in the first way of encryption, the Manila service will get the encryption key ID from the Barbican or the Castilian wrapper, and then it passes this to the backend driver. So here I'm not assuming that backend driver as a ONTAP implementation, but the actual ONTAP API. So there will be ONTAP API which will have this kind of function which accept this encryption key ID, and this ONTAP internally will basically, after getting this key ID, assumes that, or basically have the information that this is the encryption key ID and it's supposed to talk with the Barbican. And then it will talk with the Barbican and do the encryption on its own. So this is what I'm assuming. The on-tap driver, which is part of Manila service, hasn't have to talk with the Barbican.
I see.
Right.
I-
So that is what
is there?
is
Mhm. Sorry, go ahead. You were completing.
Yeah, that is what it is being assumed. So currently, even this share that is being provided, created on the NetApp are encrypted itself. The thing is that they are encrypted by means we just tell them that encrypt share. We don't have any control over the encryption. Right. For example, in the alternative section at line number 87, I have mentioned that this has an extra spec in the share type, and using this extra spec in the share type, we pass this information to the NetApp on-tap driver, and it assumes once it gets the encryption information that tells to encrypt the share, it does the encrypt on the backend on its own, like basically by the NetApp, not the on-tap driver, but by the NetApp. So encryption is currently supported in the NetApp. It's just that we have to add a wrapper layer on top of it to do this by user's own key for the more protection, like for the more safety point of view, that user will have it their own key, just to make sure that, for example, if the key server and the share provisioning server both are at the same location, the theft might cause an issue from the safety point of view. So what we can do is basically we segregate the share provisioning server at one location and the key server at another location, for example, the Barbican at another location, and this Barbican. So you like, even if there will be any kind of issue related to the theft, either of one will go, but anyway the data will be protected because the keys are at a different location. That is one use case that we got to know from customer.
I see.
Yeah, so this is the spec that I think just a couple of days ago I have raised this, but I need more and more. So currently I think ONTAP, like the Morris is in discussion with NetApp to kind of get the information about the functions or the APIs that they'll be providing in order to support the encryption. But before that, the aim is to kind of get implemented the API layer where Manila user would be able to do the encryption. So right now I have basically added only the share type related commands, and these are the couple of feats that are needed to determine the encryption support. So one can basically during the share type creation itself add the encryption information, or they can add later, or they can remove, and there will be a lot of plus minus scenarios that we need to consider. For example, if the share type is being created and a couple of shares are created using the share type, and if the encryption information is being added later, how we are going to deal with it. So what I believe this is, so even if the encryption information is associated with the share type, we still need to manage at a share level whether it's encrypted or not. So this information, that is the reason I have added one field into the share table called as encrypted. So it might possible that if the share is kind of created with a share type which was previously not having encryption information, but then later added by someone. So the previous or the shares that were created previously were not encrypted, but the new shares that are created are encrypted. and the other way around, like if there is encryption information associated with the share type and then it's later in future if it's removed, then there will be some shares that are created using the share type which are encrypted, but in future they are not. So this encrypted field in the share table will signify it's encrypted, which might be needed by the user to determine, for example, how to use that share. So
Yeah, what's not clear to me is how we are going to interact with Barbican, and that's kind of where maybe I will ask for some more details on the spec itself. How we, as in what interactions does Manila have in this picture? I understand that the encryption itself is happening on the storage backend, and it's not happening via the way Cinder and Nova coordinate to encrypt a volume. So this would require the storage
so
backend to interact.
Cinder and Nova both talks with the Barbican through the Castellium. So we will use the similar key manager called as a so there is this key manager called Castellan, and it internally talks with the Barbican. So this Castellan provides API like create key, retrieve key, delete key, and etc. And internet talks with the Barbican to perform the operation using the Barbican APIs. So we will be using the same key manager that is being used in Cinder and Nova to kind of store and retrieve the information related to the encryption.
I see, but I don't see that in the spec. Like, I don't see at least that particular thing called out as in how is this coming through the API? So you have the specs that the user creates, the encryption specs. They associate them, or rather, not the user, but an administrator, right? They associate them with the share type, and an end user is using the share type to create a share. So internally, there's something happening in order for us to pass enough information to the share backend, to the storage system, to interact with the key manager to complete the encryption itself, right? So that's the part that's not spelled out, is what I'm thinking.
Okay, fine. I'll add the information related to the key manager, like how the key manager will come into the picture. So Barbican is something that Manila is not going to talk with. It is going to talk with the key manager, that is Castellan, and it internet talks with the Barbican. So job of the Manila in the second case is to pass this information to the ONTAP as it is, so that ONTAP can fetch the key and do the encryption. And in the first case, the job is to kind of create the key from the encryption data associated with the share type and pass this key to the ONTAP, and then ONTAP will talk with the Barbican to fetch the key data to perform the encryption. So this is something the discussion is ongoing, how basically the ONTAP is going to do the communication with the Barbican, and that is still under the discussion. But for the time being, I raised this spec in order to kind of get the views on the API point of view and the front-end implementation of the encryption.
Sure, yeah.
I think Manila is not going to affect in terms of anything, as in like there will be no affection on the share status and etc. because encryption is happening even today.
Yeah, and it's happening transparently without this thing. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. I think we're out of time, but I see that Douglas has joined us. I just wanted to add, this is probably Douglas this is been a user requested feature for a while to be able to encrypt Manila share data. But of course, unlike Cinder, we don't really mount the share, and there is no coordinated way to hand off the share to a compute instance. So the thing that's being talked about here is backend encryption, and I think we would benefit from you taking a look and seeing how the services would interact and so on after Kiran adds that information. Like he's saying, we're not talking to the Barbican API, but there will be some interaction with Castellan. Right. Awesome. If Kiran, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I'll reply to the existing comments and add the information related to the key manager. But I expect some reviews from you guys and specifically from the NetApp folks, so that they'll be in picture beforehand. So if they need something to be needed at this stage, then it would be easy to add in the API layer itself, the spec as well as the initial implementation.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thanks. So, all right. Thanks for working on this and also for proposing the spec and for bringing this up at the PTG. We are 4 minutes late to our session, cross-project session with Cinder. So we can follow up in the spec later and continue the reviews. Thanks for working on this.
Sure.
And thank you everyone for participating from today's PTG. So I'm linking you to the Cinder PTG room and I'll see you there. But that's a wrap for the PTG day in the Manila room today. So thank you everyone for joining and I'll see you all tomorrow.